The 50-year mortgage, it's a lifetime of debt masquerading as affordability. Now, look, I support President Trump on many, many fronts, but this recent Truth Social post about a 50-year mortgage proposal is a terrible idea. Let's talk about it. Hey, guys, welcome to the Shermichael Singleton Show. A Saturday night, President Trump posted on Truth Social that his administration is working on a 50-year mortgage plan. Now, I was scrolling through X when this news broke. Bill Pulte, the FHA Federal Housing Authority director, confirmed this also on X, saying that it's all about affordability. And that's a critique that I have with this, because it may sound like an innovative idea, stretching the payments to lower the monthly bill to make homeownership more affordable. But I want you to just really step back for a moment and think about what's really being proposed here. Let me be clear. A 50-year mortgage does not solve the housing crisis. It literally institutionalizes it. To me, this conditions Americans to live permanently in debt. So if you're a lender, if you're a bank, you love this. It's an amazing idea. But if you're a homeowner, you should pause. So let's be clear about what the problem actually is in America. We don't have a mortgage problem, guys. We have a housing supply problem. We don't need longer loans. We literally need more homes. We need to cut the red tape, reform zoning laws, and actually build homes again. But instead of confronting those structural barriers, what do we have? Well, what are we doing? Well, we have and we're doing what we always do in this country: extending credit, printing more money, stretching the timeline, which doesn't surprise me because it's literally what every single person in Congress does every single time, which is why our deficit is almost $40 trillion. Now, let's put some numbers behind this so we can see the illusion for what it really is. Because it's one thing to just talk about things and critique things, but I think when people see it, it really sort of puts things into perspective. So let's say you take a $400,000 house. At a 6% interest rate on a 30-year mortgage, your monthly payments will give or take be around $2,398. It varies though, right? So I can acknowledge that. Over the life of that loan, though, you'll pay about $463,000 in interest. So that's already more than the house itself, but it sort of makes sense. 30 years, that's not a terribly bad time if you're in your 30s. You can try to pay that home off maybe in your early to mid 50s. But you extend that same loan to 50 years, your monthly payment drops by literally just $300, give or take. That's about $2,086. Now, maybe that sounds nice to some people out there, but here's the catch. Over those same 50 years, you will pay $851,000 in interest. Think about that. That's nearly $400,000 more, almost the price of a whole nother home. I mean, you literally could go buy a second house, maybe a vacation property, a rental property, for the interest that you'll pay over 50 years. So sure, you save a few $100s a month, but end up paying for two houses instead of one. That's not affordability. That's a financial problem. That's financial servitude dressed up as opportunity. And think about what that means in real life. You buy a home in your 30s and you're still paying the bank in your 80s. Guys, when I'm 80, I want to be retired playing with my grandkids if I'm still physically possible, hopefully even have a great grandkid or two at that point. I don't want to still be thinking about paying a mortgage. And I got a feeling, nor do you. So the paint on this house will fade. The roof will leak, the pipes will rust, but your debt, it's going to be alive and well. A 50-year mortgage will outlive your career, it will outlive your retirement, and hell, it might even outlive you. Now, some people on X have tried to defend this idea. So I want to run through those arguments and I want to address them head on. The first rebuttal that I saw was, what's to stop someone from paying it off early? Well, technically nothing. Most U.S. mortgages allow prepayment. You can pay extra toward the principal, shorten the term. But let's be honest about this, almost no one does. In fact, only about 1 in 5 Americans pay extra toward their principal, according to a 2024 research paper titled Understanding Excess Repayment. Most people don't. The vast majority don't. Why? Well, because, guys, they can't simply afford it. If people could easily pay off loans early, they wouldn't need a 50-year term in the first place. Just think about that. If you could pay your loan off early, you don't need a 50-year term. Because life gets in the way. We know inflation comes and goes. We have kids, we have health emergencies, healthcare, job changes. So the idea that most families will choose the discipline to overpay for decades straight is a fantasy that's just not backed by any data. In fact, all available data points to the opposite being the case. And there's another catch. With long-term loans, interest is front-loaded. So for the first decade or more of payments mostly go towards interest, not the principal at all. So even if you try to pay faster, you're literally climbing an uphill battle from day one. So while nothing stops you from paying early in theory, everything in reality discourages it. It's like saying nothing stops you from finishing a marathon in half the time. I mean, hell, I guess that's technically true, but guys, come on, practically that's absurd. The second rebuttal that I saw on X, someone said, well, if someone's paying $2,000 in rent, why not let them buy a house instead? Well, look, that's an emotional appeal. Sure, it resonates, and I get why, but it confuses monthly affordability with long-term security. Rent is consumption. You pay for shelter. Mortgage is an investment plus obligation. You're buying a physical asset with borrowed money and promising decades of repayment. If a renter paying $2,000 a month buys a $400,000 home with a 50-year mortgage, they may match that same monthly cost, but now you face property taxes, repairs, maintenance, insurance, rising cost. They're not escaping the trap of renting. They're merely entering into a new one. And remember this, with 50 years, you build equity at a snail's pace. I mean, basically, in the early years, almost nothing you pay for reduces the actual balance. So you might own the home on paper, but for decades, the bank owns a reality. So yes, ownership matters, but ownership built on unending debt is an illusion of freedom, basically. It's something that lacks substance. The third rebuttal that I saw on X, and this one I thought was a fascinating one, guys. If this is the best way for someone to get into their home, why not? I saw a lot of people posting that. The answer to that is simple, because it's a short-term fix that creates long-term harm. Every time the government or lenders make borrowing easier, this is what happens. We got longer terms, we get lower rates, smaller down payments, but prices rise to meet new borrowing capacity. We always get hit on the back end. Builders and sellers may capture the gain, but you, the buyer, inherit the debt. And then within a few years, housing affordability is just as bad as it was before because we never addressed the actual problem, which is a supply one. But now the average homeowner is deeper in debt and older when they finally pay it off, if they even live long enough to do so. So a 50-year mortgage isn't a ladder into the middle class. It's a treadmill that keeps you running but never lets you arrive. So now to the question about renters. I think that's actually a fair question. But I think there's a smarter, fairer, better way to address that. If policymakers genuinely wanted to expand homeownership, we should stop rewarding leverage and start rewarding responsibility. So if someone has 3 years, 4 or 5 years of on-time rental payments, a stable income, and a clean record on utilities and credit, that history should count toward mortgage qualification, especially for homes below a certain threshold, maybe $500,000 and below. That's not a handout. That's common sense. It rewards real-world reliability instead of punishing people for lacking traditional credit history. It would open the door to responsible buyers for a sizable portion of the American market. Probably 40, 50% of the American people would qualify if we instituted such efforts without inflating the market or trapping them in a 50-year mortgage, literally half a century of debt. This is what real affordability and reform looks like, one that respects the character and consistency of the buyer, not just the big lenders and the big banks. Because the deeper issue here isn't just financial, it's a cultural one. Our country a long time ago used to pride itself on self-reliance. We used to build, we used to produce, and we used to save and create. Now, much of our economy is built on financial engineering and consumption. None of that is a tangible creation. We've moved from being a producer nation, one where capital came from productivity and innovation, to a debtor's nation, where capital comes from borrowing against the future, your kids, my kids, our grandkids, and generations yet to come. It's the literal difference between owning your tools and renting them indefinitely. And I don't know about you, but I damn sure don't want to rent anything indefinitely. And this 50-year mortgage idea is the perfect symbol of that decline. It's the illusion of ownership replacing the discipline of owning and earning it. And if it fits a larger pattern, well, it shouldn't surprise you. Think about our government. Our government borrows trillions to fund its promises. Corporations borrow to buy back their own stocks. And consumers, the vast majority of us, borrow to sustain lifestyles that their wages cannot match. Debt has become our national language. We measure success not by what we produce, but by what we can finance. That is unsustainable. But debt changes people. It changes culture. It rewards consumption over production, dependency over self-reliance, and instant gratification over patience. Any country addicted to this type of borrowing will slowly lose the moral fiber that once made it exceptional. And that's where we are. So, as I've thought about this, I keep thinking to myself, it's one thing to critique this, though, Shermichael. How do we get back to that exceptional place? How do we actually address the housing crisis in our country? And so here's some ideas that I came up with that our federal government could actually do to make housing more affordable. The real solutions don't come from manipulating loan terms. They come from freeing the economy to build and letting the market respond to the need. If I were advising President Trump, I would say focus on supply side reform, not the debt side illusion. Number one, I think we could streamline construction and permitting. That would definitely help. Cut the bureaucratic delays that adds months and tens of thousands of dollars to every home built. Fast track approvals for starter homes and small multifamily units. We'll build way more houses if we just do those things. I think a second option we could do is reform zoning laws. Local zoning often blocks affordable housing by restricting density and banning mixed-use development for a whole host of reasons. That's not necessary. And I think the federal government can incentivize any municipality that modernizes these rules, making it possible to build townhomes, duplexes, small apartment complexes near jobs and transits. That would benefit the working class person out there. And then I think we need to modernize FHA and Fannie Mae. These programs are so draconian and outdated. These agencies should stop encouraging longer and riskier loans because they don't benefit the average home buyer out there. Instead, they could create equity builder mortgages. So these are basically short-term products with lower interest rates for the borrower, making consistent payments and contributing sweat equity through renovation and community programs. These are the types of things that Bill Pulte should be focusing on, in my humble opinion. We could recognize rental payment history. This is another step that I think benefits the average working class American out there. 3 years of on-time rental payments should count as evidence towards credit worthiness. So if you've been paying $2,000 a month faithfully every single month, never missing a payment, always on time, that record should carry real weight with lenders. This rewards discipline, not speculation. We should incentivize local production, offer tax credits wherever we can to small and medium-sized builders who construct affordable homes using domestic material and labor from the local community. So not only are we increasing home ownership in the country, we're employing people again. And God knows we desperately need that, especially for many of our young men. So the goal isn't to subsidize profit, it's to re-anchor housing production in American communities rather than overseas supply chains. We should expand infrastructure for growth. Many areas could build more housing but can't handle the strain on roads, schools, and federal water systems. Well, what can the federal government do to help that? Well, we could issue infrastructure grants. We could prioritize communities and commit to responsible growth instead of penalizing them for growing. Again, these things make sense. We could tackle the cost of capital, not just access to it. Encourage genuine savings through tax-advantaged housing accounts so that families can accumulate larger down payments. A system that relies less on debt, which should be our objective here, and more on savings, builds financial stability from the bottom up. Or as Dr. Carson used to say, a rising tide lifts all boats. Real reform starts with production, not prolonging payments, not adding an additional 20 years to mortgages. Our country doesn't need to borrow more years. We need to build more homes. And if we want to fix housing, well, let's fix the real barriers. Streamline permits, reform zoning, build more homes. Stop treating housing like a speculative asset and return it to what it was meant to be, a foundation for family, a foundation for stability, a foundation to build healthy, thriving, vibrant communities. Extending mortgages to 50 years doesn't do any of that. It just doesn't. And I know some people might disagree with me about this because they want to support the president. I support the president as well, but I also think we can give the president better advice to benefit the country. Kicking the can down the road and telling the next generation we couldn't afford to fix the system, so we're just handing you the bill, doesn't help anybody. A 50-year mortgage may sound like relief, but it's actually a warning. It's proof that we've accepted a permanent indebtedness as a way of life. I don't want that for our country. I love this country too much for that. The American dream was built on ownership, not obligation, not debt. Our grandparents paid off their homes and passed them down to the next generation. It put many of us through schools. It gave our parents a fighting chance. But we're now being told to rent our dreams from the bank, literally until we die. There's nothing conservative about that. And if we keep going down this road, we'll have cheaper payments, sure, but more expensive lives. We'll have more credit, but less freedom. We'll have plenty of houses, very few homeowners. The 50-year mortgage isn't a solution. It's a symptom of a culture that wants prosperity without sacrifice, growth without work, ownership without responsibility. That's not the American way. We can do better than that, because the future of a country should not be borrowed. It should be built. I'm Shermichael Singleton. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below, what did you think about this 50-year mortgage? And what do you think about my plans to actually really address the housing crisis? Adding 20 years doesn't address that. Building more homes, getting rid of the red tape, streamlining, giving tax credits, savings accounts for new homeowners. Those are all the steps we should be making that will give every single American a fighting chance to build wealth to pass on to the next generation. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys, and God bless.